Hi, and welcome back. Now, you've been through the exercise comparing the four pictures to each other. You've looked for similarities, for differences, and I hope you actually wrote those things down. I also hope that you made your own ranking of which picture you like best. Now let's debrief the exercise together. I guess you identified as similarities things like we have flowers on every picture, and every picture seems to have a sun. Every picture also has cows or things that could look like a cow, right? With regards to differences, it's pretty obvious that some of our pictures lack green grass or a meadow in general. We also see that some pictures have different numbers of the items that we mentioned earlier. So on two pictures we only have one sun, whereas on the two other pictures we have two suns. Also, the number of flowers, the color of the flowers, and the positioning of the flowers can be very different between the four pictures. When it comes to ranking the pictures, I guess that you ranked picture 1 and 3 higher than pictures 2 and 4. My guess is you did that because those pictures in general make more sense. It's a more cohesive picture. Whereas pictures 2 and 4 might have most of the items on them, other than the green grass, but as a collective, it doesn't look like a cohesive picture. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I refer to these pictures as Frankenstein pictures. Everything is there, but it's not really nice. Now let's explore together what resulted in the differences between these pictures. And the answer is fairly simple. We had two sets of requirements. Pictures 1 and 3 have the same requirement, and pictures 2 and 4 have the same requirement. The first requirement for pictures 1 and 3 is fairly short, as you can see in this video. The requirement for pictures 2 and 4 is much longer, and now you can see both requirements as a comparison. What you probably immediately register is that the requirements start out with the same sentence. But then the longer requirements, provides us with much more detail. Now some of you might think, yes, once we have much more detail, it is beneficial. But the truth is, and you can see this based on this exercise, that once you provide so much more detail, you lose the big picture. There's a saying for this. You lose the forest for the trees. So what do we do here? What kind of recommendation would we give to people who create requirements? My advice is to start out with the short requirements that demonstrates what the big picture should be. Because even if people don't get all the details right, for example, the number of flowers, it is so much more valuable to get the big picture right. If you start out with a larger requirement, with a longer, more detailed requirement, and basically throw it over the fence, as I did with the participants who created these drawings, you will get pictures that make no sense at all, even if they capture all the details correctly. Now some of you might ask yourself, but what if I want a certain number of flowers? If I give people only the short requirement, I might not get that specific number of flowers. And you are correct in that assumption. There are multiple ways to deal with that. One of the ideas that many people in my classes always have is start out with a short requirement, let people do the drawing, and then provide feedback. So if I now get to a team that has created that drawing and tell them, oh, I like the picture, but I actually wanted 10 blue flowers, what might they say? Their response might be, why didn't you tell us in the first place? And they're right in saying that. So giving feedback is not a bad thing, right? Feedback is one of the pieces of empirical process control. But if you already know what you want, for example, the number of flowers, there's probably a way to communicate that earlier. Now, a lot of people say, if I know the number of flowers, the number of cows, and the position of my sun, I can put this all in my requirement. The problem is, though, I will end up with requirement number 2, which then results in not so good pictures. The solution here is one thing. You don't throw any of those requirements, not the short one, not the long one over the fence. You start out with a short requirement, which is then a foundation to have a conversation, and we will deep dive on that a bit later. And out of that conversation, you come up with the longer requirement. So initially, people get a good understanding of what the big picture is, and then you also create a shared understanding of what the details are. Once you do that, you end up with pictures that include all the details as you want them, but also capture the big picture. In our next video, I will walk you briefly through a model which we call the 3C model, and that helps you get a much better understanding of how to create product backlog items that ultimately result in something that the product owner and stakeholders actually wanted. See you in that video.